Well, I hope everybody had a great break. Obviously, Tennessee did. That's the reason I showed up in the orange. We've got Lane Kiffin sitting here in the middle with his Ole Miss colors on. Everybody asked, why in the world would I wear orange? What a week and a half Tennessee's had.
Oh, it's more than just that. I mean, what a year just with the home record. Football getting to 11 wins, baseball #1 at some point, basketball SEC tournament champions, and undefeated in conference play through the first 3 this year, and the last 2 have just been drubbings by Rick Barnes and company. So, but let's get back to football. 11 wins. I mean,
we'll get to basketball here in a little bit. We don't want to disrespect.
We got a lot to get caught up on.
I like how we go 10 seconds on basketball and then also goes, but let's get back to football.
Well, again, we'll talk more about basketball every week, but we got to recap the bowl. And Tennessee went 11 games for the first time since 2001, Jason. If you told anybody back in July, hey, your defense is going to allow less than 30 points in 10 of the 13 games, everybody would have taken that and run. They all get caught up on that South Carolina game. We get it. It was bad. But, I mean, really, when you think about it, the defense took a huge step this year and I think is on pace to take an even bigger step in 23.
Yeah, it was a bend but don't break defense in the Orange Bowl, and it certainly worked out. Clemson could not get into the end zone. Tennessee's offense was stagnant at times, but Tennessee's defense made up the slack when Tennessee's offense was stagnant. Aaron Beasley was an absolute beast in the football game. But to finish 11 wins, 2 losses, 11 wins for the first time in 2001, no one would have guessed that one.
First time to get into 11 wins since Jason Swain was running the halls of Grissom High School.
Yeah, sophomore in high school.
He was running them too. By the way, we're looking at Joe Milton right there. I'll admit, I put on Twitter, okay, now I feel good about next year, because he hit everything that he could have hit in that game. And he looked like the quarterback that we thought Tennessee was getting when we transferred from Michigan.
Well, they still had moments of lulls and they were stagnant a little bit. But you're right. I mean, showed in tremendous growth. Now, where he's got to continue to improve, in my opinion, Jason, is the ability to create and improvise when things aren't there. That's something Hendon was really good at. Joe can get there, but again, I think that's where the evolution of his game takes its next step. The deep ball right there to Ramel Keaton when Ramel Keaton was way behind the Clemson DB who got burned. That's where you showed the growth. Throwing the seeds to Squirrel White and to Brew McCoy, those are special throws that I'm not even sure Hendon can make because of where the ball placement and the velocity you have to throw that ball at.
Yeah, those are pro throws. The one to Brew, the one to Squirrel, those are pro football throws. And everyone thinks that Joe Milton has one of the best arms in football, period, regardless of the level. Yeah. But for Joe Milton to take that next step, if he's not going to be mobile in the pocket like Hendon, which I don't think he's going to be, I don't think he has that type of agility, it just puts more pressure on him to be really good in the pocket, anticipating throws, being very, very accurate, seeing things way early in his progression. And I think he could do that going into the 3rd year of his development here inside this program.
How much of what we saw against Clemson and we hope to see as Tennessee goes forward is having been in Heupel's system longer, the game slowing down because you know what they're trying to get out of you?
Well, I think it's important that Joe had all these reps with the second-team receivers all season long. I mean, Squirrel was working with the number 2s, Ramel was working with the number 2s, and it was easy for him to go out there and hit those guys in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I think that it definitely helps. I mean, remember when he first got here, it was post-spring. He's kind of just handed the job based off of, potential.
Right.
And, he kind of stuck in there. This team would go to war with Joe Milton. They loved the way he handled himself when he didn't, retain his job when he got hurt, and Hendon just kind of came in and ran with it, and Joe kind of just stood in there, was a good teammate. I think that's why this team was, so vocal about Joe during bowl practice. I think they're big fans. I think they want Joe to do well. And again, I think Joe's committed to doing well. Now, the question will become is what is Joe like when Hendon's no longer there in the apartment every day, in the quarterback room every day. When Joe is the guy and everyone around him is a younger guy, does he kind of ascend to that Hendon role? Is that in him? Where does that go from here, Jason?
That's going to be the question. Hearing how those 2 guys prepared, Hendon
together
was on Zoom was there in Miami, was right there next to his side. I think that was a big reason why Joe was able to play the way he played. How is Joe going to prepare and handle himself now that Hendon is away?
Let me touch on something you said just a second ago. As a former wide receiver, you know the importance and the value of those hours that you put in together in the offseason with your quarterback, working on the timing. Do you feel like that Joe Milton had the success that he did? He might not have had that against Clemson had Jalen Hyatt been in there, had Tillman been in there, because he was throwing with the second-team guys rather than those guys? Did it almost help that they weren't there?
I think it helped, but I don't think it would have hurt Joe Milton's chances to have the same performance if Tillman and Hyatt was out there. I think what we saw from Milton last year was a guy that was basically thrown into the starting job, and he got here at the end of spring. So he really only had 2-3 months to build chemistry with the receivers and guys that he never really worked with
But
before.
Hendon got here the same time.
Yeah.
No, Hendon got here 4 months earlier.
Yeah, Hendon participated in spring, and that's why they called Joe and brought Joe down, because they were not sold with Hendon during the spring. And then Hendon lost a job, and Hendon had his bumps a little bit when he came in but Pittsburgh game. So it takes time to build chemistry with receivers, and then it takes time to learn the offense and feel comfortable. I think that's what happened with those two quarterbacks.
I think had Jalen and Cedric play, they would have been just fine. I think more than anything, the fact that Cedric wasn't there most of the year and you had Ramel kind of as a pseudo starter for 75% of the year. I think that made the drop off not as drastic. So basically, Ramel was basically a starter 75-80% of the year. Brew was a starter all year. So 2 of your 3 were basically guys that suited up and started every week. And then Squirrel, as Jason pointed out, was someone he had been throwing to anyway. So, and had come on near the end of the year. So, I mean, I just didn't feel like there was going to be a huge drop-off at receiver in the game, and there wasn't.
And I'll admit, we've talked about this before. I've expressed concern over some younger guys like a Squirrel White who came in with so many accolades and yet got overshadowed all year long. Now, Jalen Hyatt and those guys had the same situation. They had to wait their turn. But for Squirrel White, how big was it that he got out there and was able to show his stuff going into the offseason? You don't have to worry about the portal or anything with this kid. He knows he's the heir apparent.
I mean, I wasn't worried about Squirrel in the first place because he played slot. And the last 2 guys that have played slot, they've had career years. Velus Jones had a career year. Jalen Hyatt goes on and win the Blitnikoff.
He had the real career year.
So, I mean, I feel like Squirrel will go out there and play well anyways, just based on scheme.
He knew that before.
He had 10 targets for 9 catches. So if you play slot in this offense, you're going to get opportunities.
Yeah, he's right. And Tennessee's always going to want to try to bring in receivers. That's why they had Dante Thornton here, and we'll talk more about recruiting going forward. But I mean, they're always going to want to have top end guys. But more importantly, if you know Coach Heupel, he wants players that can run. That's why Squirrel's so attractive. That's why bringing in Dante Thornton is so attractive. That's why Jalen Hyatt had such a big year. You go back to his time at Missouri, he's throwing it to Emmanuel Hall. Emmanuel Hall didn't have the greatest hands, but if you could run right by somebody and Drew Lock's throwing it to you, you don't have to have great hands if you're catching a route on air, right? There's no pressure.
There's some guys that could run when that guy was playing. I'll promise you had a number of guys that could run. Let's take a break. When we come back, I do want to get into what Austin said about recruiting. Every year is a different year, especially when you talk about the transfer portal and all of that. We'll do that when we come back on The Locker Room, connected by Iris Networks.
The Locker Room is brought to you by Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Iris Networks, Knoxville Orthopedic Clinics, and Exterior Home Solutions.
When it comes to the game of football, teamwork is critical for success. When it comes to customer service and business, that team approach is just as critical. That's why we're such believers in our friends at Exterior Home Solutions. We have seen firsthand how Exterior Home Solutions has supported our community and treats their customers just like family. So when it comes to roofing, siding, or maybe a complete overhaul, please make Exterior Home Solutions your first and only call.
Land that corporate dream job. Recalculating. Getting the representation and compensation you deserve? You have arrived. OEB Law is there for all of life's detours.
Blue 2020 F-150 $41,990. Hut! Jake drops back. He's got a deal wide open. The crowd goes wild. With savings, Whether you're looking for a low-mileage pre-owned truck to tailgate in or a minivan to get the whole family to the game, the Pre-Owned Patrol has what you're looking for. Only at Ted Russell Ford on Kingston Pike or Parkside Drive.
Hey, this is UT head football coach Josh Heupel. It's football time in Tennessee. When the Big Orange play, you don't have to miss a second of the action. Before, during, and after the game. Just make sure your radios are tuned in to 107.7 WIVK. Or if you're on the go, download the WIVK app and listen anywhere. Your flagship station for the Tennessee Volunteers. 107.7 WIVK. It's a Tennessee tradition.
Do you want top-of-the-line fitness equipment for home, school, or work? New or reconditioned, Dynabody in Maryville has everything you need to build that gym. Used equipment brands include Paramount, Life Fitness, Nautilus, Hammer Strength, and Precor. Reach for the power with Dynabody.
Austin's proud of his new jacket. Was that a Christmas present?
To myself, man.
Really? I'm still waiting on mine. Okay, so recruiting. Since we talked the last time, National Signing Day has come and gone. Your thoughts on the haul that Tennessee got? Well, the first period anyway.
I thought, it was a really good class. They filled needs defensively. I think that's where this class sets its self apart. When you look at Caleb Herring and David Hobbs and Arion Carter and so many high-end defensive prospects. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about Nico, but when I look at the linebackers Tennessee got, the trio of linebackers, the trio of corners, John Slaughter, this staff as excited as anybody on the defensive side, having went through bowl practice. Again, small sample size, it's a handful of practices, but he made enough plays out there in his small sample size that, the defensive staff's like, nice.
So where are the biggest holes?
Leaving
this year and going to the next year.
I think it's offensive tackle. You had to piecemeal it together on the left side all year long. Darnell Wright was the most consistent person on the right hand or on the right side, that you could ever ask for. But he's gone now. So, where do you go? John Campbell, someone that visited this past week. He also visited Florida. It's a Tennessee-Florida battle he'll announce tomorrow. I would call that coin flip type thing at this point. And then, if you don't get him, I think you're going into spring with what you have and hoping someone that can help you goes into the portal in that spring wave. But that's a lot to ask too, because I'm just not sure that the quality of player will be there in the spring wave that was there post regular season.
Obviously, you lose the big names of Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyde and Cedric Tillman, like we talked about. You lose those guys. Does that concern you immensely that Tennessee made the step because of Hendon Hooker at quarterback, or did they make the step because of the overall program?
Well, Hendon was a big reason why this team made the big jump. But I think the reason why this team exceeded expectations was because of the offensive line. The offensive line played extremely well at the beginning of the season, through the middle of the season. And then towards the end of the season, had some holding calls that stalled some drives. We saw that happening against Clemson, unable to run the football. In Georgia and the South Carolina game, the trenches, probably could have masked some things. I think if you are Josh Heupel and the staff, addressing the defensive line, getting more guys who can rush the passer, and then figuring out whatever you have to do offensive line-wise to be able to run the football more, take more pressure off of the quarterback. Because Hendon had a lot on his plate, and he was able to execute and play well, but you don't want the same type of pressure on Joe Milton or even freshman Nico.
Now that Tennessee has made this jump, though, and we saw this with Ole Miss a few years back. When Freeze was there, they made a big jump. They had that great year, and then kind of went away for their own reasons, and Tennessee won't have those reasons here. But do you feel like on the recruiting trail that the Tennessee name is obviously much more, I would sure hope it's much more respected now than it was even a year ago?
Well, yeah, there's a lot less, there's not that big dark cloud hanging over you. A year ago, for that most of that 22 class, you had the NCAA, violations, hanging over your head. That's no longer the case. I know that's totally not resolved, but at the same time, there's not going to be a postseason ban. Tennessee might have to cough up 2-3 more scholarships, something like that, but all that's cosmetic stuff that the common fan, the common recruit never even notices.
But I don't think that was as much the concern from where I sit.
Oh, it was a year ago. That's where they couldn't recruit early on because every school was looking at players X, Y, and Z that Tennessee was recruiting going, they're going to have a 3-year postseason ban, a 4-year postseason ban. And Tennessee couldn't say definitively, no, we're not.
Okay.
So then all of a sudden, if you're a mama or a daddy or a prospect, are you believing the school that's under investigation or the one that's telling you that they're going to go under probation that's not under investigation?
But Jason, on top of that, and I know what Austin's saying, I agree with that, but on top of that, the Tennessee program hadn't done anything that gave it respectability to go into some kid's living room and say, hey, I know you're looking at Alabama, I know you're looking at Georgia, I know you're looking at Clemson, come to Tennessee. And now all of a sudden you look at a season, you go, okay, we beat Alabama, we beat Clemson, beat Florida, beat LSU, beat all of those teams in 1 year. And to me, that's a game-changing year.
You beat all the teams that all the recruits like right now, except for Georgia. You beat those teams, number one. Number two, you had Hendon Hooker that was at one point leading the Heisman race. Number three, Jalen Hyatt wins the Blitnikoff.
And you hit number one in the country.
Yeah, so you have all these factors kind of going for you. Then I think the small part is, hey, you had some flashy uniforms. It was really cool. And then you had some pretty cool experiences, on TV, going on the road, beating LSU, taking over their stadium, and then the scene versus Alabama.
You got a lot of free advertising.
Absolutely. And you had game day, come here twice. Came here twice.
And then they were at Georgia.
Yeah.
I'll say this, to add to your point, when you look at, and to add to your point too, when you look at who Tennessee beat out for Arion Carter, Alabama, David Hobbs, Alabama, and Georgia. I mean, you start winning those battles. Those are battles Tennessee hasn't beat out Alabama
and that was my
and
point.
Georgia.
That was my point.
For now, did they do that? They did that because of relationships. David Hobbs had liked Tennessee for a long time. Tennessee was even late to offer, but they were still able to overcome that because he really enjoyed this staff. Arion Carter, 3-4 months ago, was going to Memphis to play running back. All of a sudden, they moved him to linebacker his senior year, and he sends out some linebacker tape, and all of a sudden, he gets 40 Power 5 offers in like 5 minutes. And that's only a slight exaggeration. It was like 5 days. I mean, every day, it was like boom, 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 boom. I mean, he wasn't even putting out like Penn State and teams like that, right? I mean, like really good programs because he was getting so many of them.
Yeah.
And, he visits Ohio State. It was like 12 degrees, and he said, nah. So he canceled the Michigan trip the next week, and so he just kind of was down to Tennessee and Alabama. And Alabama shot their best shot, and it wasn't good enough. Tennessee was able to get that one done because Josh Heupel made him a huge priority. And, the staff, again, won battles that this program's not won in a while. And, it puts them in position with the 24 class to, continue to put together these classes that are, right there in the top 10.
I got about 1 minute before we got to get to break. Monday night, Georgia plays my alma mater, TCU.
Go TCU.
I think it'll be a blowout.
Will you wear a purple suit next week if at TCU wins?
My dad, who's 85 in Texas, who's a TCU guy also, has a purple velour sport coat that he wears. Okay,
Wear that. Do the hand sign.
I won't. But here's
do the hand sign. Yeah, do the hand sign.
Come on, man.
It's this right here. It's Riff Ram Bazoo, and I'm not saying the rest of it because it gets
Let's
kind
go.
of weird. Here's what I was going to say is, it really does get weird. Do you think that Tennessee can catch all these other teams? How long would it take them to catch Georgia? With where Georgia is right now.
A couple of years of recruiting to catch Georgia, because you look at the area of the game where you can tell the difference is special teams. Like, go look at special teams. Do you have 4- and 5-star players on special teams because they can't get on the field? If the answer is yes, then you're right there with Georgia. So it'll take a couple of years for that to happen.
Well, and it's the line of scrimmage too.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like Tennessee doesn't have Jalen Carter.
Correct.
Titans could use him. Okay, let's take a break right now. We'll come back. We'll get into basketball. And by the way, at the end of the show, I do have a beef about Hendon Hooker. It's not about him. It's about him. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. By the way, you can support the initiative that is the NIL with Spire Sports by being a member of the Volunteer Club. Go online to volunteerclub.com. Transitioning to basketball when we come back on The Locker Room.
The Locker Room is brought to you by Commercial Bank, Humana, E2 Sports, and OEB Law. The Locker Room is brought to you in part by Knoxville Orthopedic Clinics, the exclusive orthopedic provider for University of Tennessee athletics for over 70 years.
This is the story of John Smith. Not this John Smith, or this John Smith, or any of the other hundreds of John Smiths that are Humana Medicare Advantage members. No, it's this John Smith, who we paired with a Humana team member to help address his own specific health needs. At Humana, we take a personal approach to your health to provide care that's just as unique as you are, no matter what your name is.
Behind every Food City meat and seafood counter is a highly trained, certified butcher. Our butchers offer special orders, custom cuts, and even entire meal recommendations. In fact, you'll be so impressed with our butchers, you'll be asking yourself, what can't they do?
Huh, I bet he'd be great at wrapping presents.
Okay, well, maybe not that. But at Food City, our butchers make almost everything better.
At D1, our slogan is the place for the athlete. But who is the athlete? While you'll see a number of our athletes on courts and fields, not all of those athletes are starting left tackle in the football game. We pride ourselves with being the place for all athletes, 7 to 70, mom or son, dad or daughter, with locations all over Tennessee. And we have training programs for every athlete. So stop by any of our locations and let's find the best athlete in you.
So as bad as Tennessee played against South Carolina in football, they played that well against them in basketball, and Rick Barnes has this team rolling 85-42. Good grief, what happened on Saturday.
Shot the ball well from the outside. Tennessee's been on fire the last 2 games. You're getting open shots, you're sharing the basketball. Other guys are stepping up and playing some of their best ball, especially Olivier Combois. I mean, it's been fun to watch these guys. Julian Phillips is starting to come into his own a little bit as well. It's been fun.
All you need to know about Combois is Tennessee's played 2 games since New Year's, and he's yet to miss a shot. So he's not missed a shot in 2023. and he scored. It's not like he shot like 2 shots either. I mean, like, it's really ridiculous. And after playing so poorly, Jason, at Ole Miss, now they got the win, but I mean, they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. The last 2 games, they could have thrown it in a thimble from space. I mean, like, they have been shooting the lights out, and I think that just goes back to when you've got some shooters like Santi who have been struggling, to see that ball go in, all of a sudden it just changes the thought process.
It's amazing, man. I think this team's better than the team last year at this point right now. I mean, they got more guys that Rick Barnes trusts to go in and play on offense, not worry about turning the basketball over, and then defensively, I mean, they're savages, straight up savages. I mean, Vescovi.
Wow.
Yeah, they are.
We did.
Individually, they can guard the ball.
You never called anybody or anything savage during the football season they had, but in basketball, they're savages.
Defensively, they are.
You know what I have to say about that?
Yeah, brother.
That's it. What Austin said.
They talked about it after the game on TV on SEC Network and said, what was more impressive about the win over South Carolina, the offensive end or the defensive end? It was a great question at 85-42. You've now got a week where you've got Vanderbilt coming to town on Tuesday.
9 o'clock, you going to that one?
You got Kentucky coming to town on Saturday. Kentucky's an absolute dumpster fire.
It's a trap game, in my opinion, though. They still got talent.
Chris Loftus today.
Yeah, well, you got that coming then at Mississippi State, at LSU. I mean, the schedule for this team at 13-2.
Right now, your bench is Tobe Awaka, Zakai Ziegler, Josiah Jordan-James, Jonas Adu, and Jemai Mashak. That's a good starting 5 for most teams.
Did you practice all that?
No.
I mean, that's the most impressive thing you've ever done is to run through all their names and not mess. And if you messed one of them up, I'm not even aware that you did.
But I mean, like, you see what I'm saying though? Like, what he just said is absolutely accurate. They are so deep.
Right.
Like, you can have
if somebody's having an off night,
you can have Josiah Jordan-James miss almost 10 games, and there's not really a fall off because these other guys. Now he's back, and it's like,
what do we do with him?
Wow, you know, I mean, because all of a sudden these other players have stepped up in his absence, and I mean, it's only made him deeper. And Tobe Awaka, I mean, as I call him, Fozzie Bear, Waka Waka. Hey, He is a great evaluation. I mean, was like no star Johnny from New York all of a sudden is down here and playing major minutes for Rick Barnes. I mean, this guy has just really developed in a hurry.
You got the Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley.
Yes. Yes.
So the week for Tennessee, Vanderbilt Tuesday, Kentucky on Saturday. When we come back, a frustration that I have involving Hendon Hooker. We'll finish the show with that when we come back.
Clickbait.
The Locker Room is brought to you by Pilot Company, Ted Russell Ford, Food City, and Lincoln Memorial University.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Costa. Dr. Malone and I here at Knoxville Smiles are here to help you with any of your dental needs, whether it's a routine cleaning, a root canal, or if you just want some advice. Did you know that you don't have to settle for a denture anymore? My team and Dr. Malone are here to help you no matter where you're at and to help you figure out the truth for your dental health. So give us a call or visit our website at knoxvillesmiles.com.
Matlock Tire has a reputation for being a little bit old school. We're proud to be known for our outstanding hometown customer service. We've been doing things that way for over 60 years. But Matlock now offers new modern conveniences, such as family-friendly waiting areas, online appointment scheduling. You can even shop for tires and see our current stock right from your computer or smartphone. We invite you to stop into one of our 5 convenient locations or come see us online at matlocktireservice.com. Modern convenience, hometown service. Matlock Tire Service and Auto Repair.
I chose LMU because I wanted doors to open for me. For my future to have endless possibilities. To know I could become anything I wanted to be. Objection, Your Honor. I always wanted to say that. So whether I wanted to be a veterinarian, a high school teacher, let's turn to page 32, or a successful dentist, I knew LMU would help me get there. All I had to do was open the door.
So here's my beef. I'm always into the NFL mock drafts, getting ready for April. I look at all the mock drafts and I see Will Levis as a top 5 pick Kentucky quarterback. I see Anthony Richardson out of Florida as a top 20 pick. And Hendon Hooker is nowhere to be found. He owned those guys.
That's not Hendon's fault.
Is he, hang on, here's my question. This is not my beef with Hendon. My beef is he a system quarterback like Spurrier used to have with all the Florida quarterbacks? Because to me, it wasn't even close, the quarterback Hendon Hooker was in comparison with those two guys.
The tough part about this is the Combine and Pro Day was supposed to be his opportunity to prove it. He won't be able to do it because of the ACL. So the answer is we'll have to find out and see when he gets in the NFL. He has to answer that question. We can't answer that question.
Which I go back to, he's going to get drafted, but I honestly think the best thing for Hendon would be to not get drafted and be able to pick where you go. Because I think that's half the battle in the NFL. Think about Trey Smith. He falls all the way to the 6th round because they're worried about his, blood clots in the lungs. But
and look at him now.
But he went to the Chiefs with an established quarterback who's not going anywhere for the next 15 years.
Right.
He keeps the blood clots away, and he is dominating.
I just think that Hendon Hooker is a bona fide NFL star at quarterback. I think he proved that. He proved it on the field. Will Levis came in here, and to steal the line we used earlier, was a dumpster fire when he came in here. Anthony Richardson was kind of okay. I don't understand that. And
they do everything based off potential, like what they think you can be. Will Levis has the measurables of Josh Allen, so they want to think he's Josh Allen 2.0.
We'll see you next Sunday night. Still frustrated.
Who's Mark Packer 2.0?
I don't know. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.